My name is Jennifer, and I am 31 years old. I am currently standing on the damp pavement of my childhood driveway in Portland, Oregon. It is exactly 10:22 p.m., and the porch light is flickering, the same light my father installed 20 years ago. At my feet sits a single, overstuffed suitcase, its zipper straining against the weight of everything I could grab in 15 minutes. 24 hours ago, this house was my home. Now I am standing in the rain, looking at the door I am no longer allowed to open. My mother, Martha, didn't even look me in the eye when she handed me that suitcase. She was too busy clearing off my desk to make room for my brother Caleb's new executive monitors. Caleb, the golden boy, the visionary, the man whose career was apparently so important that his sister's life had to be dismantled to support it. Caleb is on the verge of a multi-million-dollar breakthrough, Jennifer, she had told me, her voice as cold as the Oregon mist. He needs the space. He needs the focus. You've always been the reliable one. You'll figure it out. But Caleb, this is his moment. What my mother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Caleb's moment was built on a foundation of glass. They thought I was the failure because I spent my nights auditing spreadsheets as a forensic accountant, while Caleb posted photos of private jets and expensive watches. They treated me like a ghost in my own home, a background character in the epic saga of Caleb's success. But here's the thing about glass foundations. They don't just crack, they shatter. And when they do, they take everyone standing on them down with the wreckage. My mother kicked me out to protect his future, but within 24 hours, that same future would lead the authorities directly to her front door. I didn't plan for his world to collapse, but I was the only one who saw the truth coming. And I was the only one they had left behind. In this family, silence has a way of making the truth very, very loud. Welcome back to the channel, where real family stories unfold with honesty, dignity, and the kind of quiet strength that changes everything. This is a place for the stories that happen behind closed doors, the ones that test our loyalty and reveal who people truly are when the lights go out. If you have ever been the person your family overlooked, or if you've had to stand your ground when everyone else was walking away, this story is for you. Before we dive into how a single night at a family dinner destroyed a legacy, please take a moment to drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful experiences with the respect they deserve. Now, let me tell you how we got to that rainy driveway and the secret Caleb was hiding in plain sight. To understand why I was standing in the rain with a single suitcase, you have to understand the house I grew up in. Our home in Portland wasn't just a building, it was a corporate hierarchy, and my mother, Martha, was the CEO who had already decided who was destined for the corner office and who was stuck in the basement. I am a forensic accountant. My entire professional life is built on the belief that numbers do not have feelings, they do not have favorites, and they certainly do not lie. If a ledger is out of balance, there is a reason. But in the Townsend household, the ledger was permanently skewed. From the time we were children, Caleb was the investment, and I was the operating expense. I remember my 16th birthday. I had spent the entire summer working at a local diner in downtown Portland, saving every tip to buy a used car so I could drive myself to school and my part-time job. I was $400 short. I asked my mother if she could help me bridge the gap as a birthday gift. Martha didn't even look up from the brochure she was reading, a brochure for an elite, private summer leadership camp for Caleb. "Jennifer, you're so practical," she had said, her voice dripping with that patronizing sweetness I would grow to loathe. "You have a job. You understand the value of a dollar. But Caleb? He has a spark. He needs these opportunities to truly soar. We have to prioritize his future right now." Caleb didn't just soar, he was launched. While I was taking out student loans and working double shifts to finish my degree in accounting, Caleb was being handed the keys to the world. He didn't just go to college, he explored his options on my mother's dime. When he finally decided to start his first tech firm at 22, Martha didn't ask for a business plan. She didn't ask about market volatility or revenue streams. She simply tapped into the equity of our family home to give him his first six-figure check. "He's a visionary," she would tell the neighbors at the Sunday brunch. "He's going to change the world." Jennifer is doing well too. She's very stable. She works with numbers in a little office. That was my identity. stable. The girl who filed the taxes, the girl who remembered the oil changes on Martha's car, the girl who knew exactly how much was left in the retirement accounts because she was the only one bothered to check. I was the infrastructure that kept the house standing, while Caleb was the gold leaf on the ceiling that everyone was told to admire. By the time I was 28, I had built a successful career. I was the one the big firms called when a CEO was suspected of embezzlement, or when a high-profile divorce needed a paper trail followed to the ends of the earth. I was good at my job because I had spent a lifetime watching people hide the truth behind beautiful words. I knew that the more someone talked about their vision, the less they usually had in their bank account. Caleb, meanwhile, was living a life that looked like a movie trailer. He lived in a high-rise apartment, wore suits that cost more than my first 2 years of tuition, and posted photos of private meetings in Seattle and San Francisco. To my mother, this was proof of his genius. To me, it looked like a load-bearing wall that was missing its foundation. Whenever I tried to ask Caleb about his business model or his investors, Martha would shut me down instantly. "Don't be so clinical, Jennifer. Not everyone is as cold as a spreadsheet. Your brother is an artist of industry. You wouldn't understand the risks he takes." The risk, as it turned out, wasn't his to take. It was ours. But in Martha's mind, there was no price too high for Caleb's success. She had created an environment where his comfort was a necessity, and my existence was a convenience. I was allowed to stay in the family home after my father passed away, only because I was the one who could navigate the legalities of the estate. I was the uncompensated consultant of the Townsend family. But then came the announcement. The multi-million-dollar deal. Caleb walked into the living room 3 months ago with a bottle of expensive scotch and a look of predatory triumph. He told Martha that he was on the verge of taking his firm global, but he needed a centralized headquarters, and he decided that our family home was the perfect location for his new executive suite. He didn't ask me if I minded moving out of the room I had lived in for a decade. He didn't ask where I would go. He simply looked at Martha and said, "It's for the legacy, Mom." And Martha, without a second thought, turned to me and said those words that still ring in my head. "Jennifer, you've always been so independent. You'll find a way. But your brother, he needs us now." That was the moment the balance shifted. That was the moment I realized that being reliable was just another word for being expendable. I left that house not just with a suitcase, but with a mission. Because if Caleb was as successful as he claimed to be, why did he need my bedroom? And why was my mother's name on every legal document he signed? I am a forensic accountant. I don't guess, I don't hope, I audit. And I was about to perform the most thorough audit of Caleb Townsend's life. The dinner that changed my life didn't happen at a 5-star restaurant or a corporate gala. It happened in the same dining room where I had done my homework for 12 years, under the same chandelier that my father had carefully polished every Christmas. The smell of pot roast filled the air, a scent that used to mean safety but now felt like a suffocating shroud. My mother, Martha, had been buzzing with a frantic, nervous energy all afternoon. She had set the table with the good china, the gold-rimmed plates that were usually reserved for weddings or monumental news. Caleb arrived 40 minutes late, his black SUV idling loudly in the driveway, as if to announce that a very important person had graced us with his presence. When he walked in, he didn't apologize for the delay. He didn't hug me. He walked straight to the head of the table, the seat my father used to occupy, and tossed his keys onto the polished wood. "It's happening, Mom," he said, his voice ringing with a level of confidence that bordered on mania. "The Apex expansion. I've secured the preliminary contracts. We're going global." Martha's face lit up as if she had just seen a vision of the divine. She clapped her hands together, her eyes shining with tears. "I knew it. I always knew you were destined for this, Caleb. Jennifer, did you hear that? Your brother is going to be one of the youngest global CEOs in the Pacific Northwest." I took a slow sip of my water, my forensic mind already flagging the terminology. Apex expansion? Caleb, last month you said you were still in the R&D phase for the software. How do you have global contracts already? Caleb's smile didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted a flaw in the fence. Jennifer, you've spent too much time looking at small-scale tax returns. You don't understand how the big leagues work. You move fast, or you get left behind. I've already got the board's commitment, but the final infrastructure requires a specific liquidity injection, a bridge loan, essentially, before the Series A funding clears. Liquidity injection, I repeated. You mean cash? How much? Caleb looked at Martha. Martha didn't look at me. She reached across the table and took Caleb's hand. We've talked about it, Jennifer. Caleb needs $500,000 to secure the headquarters and the initial server farm in Seattle. It's a temporary move. Once the deal goes public, he'll be worth $50 million, at least. The room felt like it was tilting. 500,000? Mom, you don't have that in cash. The only way to get that kind of money is… I stopped as the realization hit me. You're selling the house? And my college fund? I was going to use that for my master's, and you said that was my inheritance from Dad. Martha straightened her back, her CEO of the household mask firmly in place. The house is far too big for me anyway, Jennifer. And your father would have wanted his son to succeed. This isn't a loss. It's an investment in the Townsend legacy. Caleb is the legacy. You have a stable job. You've always been able to take care of yourself. You don't need a fund. Caleb needs a platform. But it got worse. Caleb stood up and started pacing the dining room, gesturing to the walls as if they were already his property. The thing is, Jennifer, the Seattle move is going to take a few months to finalize. In the meantime, I need a centralized hub for my executive team, a private office where we can run the numbers without distractions. I've decided to use this house as the interim headquarters. Interim headquarters? I asked, my voice rising for the first time. This is a home, Caleb, not a server farm, which is why, Martha interrupted, her voice dropping into that chillingly calm tone I had heard her use once before when she fired our longtime gardener. We need you to move out by the end of the week. Caleb needs your room for the high-speed data racks. He needs the peace and quiet. You're 31, Jennifer. You should have been out on your own years ago. You've been clinging to this house like a security blanket, and it's holding Caleb back. I looked at the two of them. My brother, the visionary, who was currently asking for $500,000 of his mother's retirement money, and my mother, the woman who was willing to make her own daughter homeless to fuel a fantasy. You're kicking me out, I said, the words feeling heavy and cold. In 24 hours? Where am I supposed to go? Caleb laughed, a short, sharp sound. With your stable salary? You can find a studio in the suburbs. Or maybe one of those audit firms you work for can put you up. You're always talking about how essential you are to them. Prove it. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that only I could hear. This house is mine now, Jen. The money is mine. The legacy is mine. You're just the help that stayed too long. Don't make this awkward for Mom. Just pack your little spreadsheets and go. Martha stood up and began clearing the plates, even though we hadn't finished eating. The good china clinked together, a sharp, jarring noise. I'll have the suitcase I bought you for your graduation in the hallway. It's a nice suitcase, Jennifer. Very practical, just like you. I sat there in the silence that followed, watching them. Caleb was already on his phone, scrolling through what I now know were fake stock projections, and Martha was smiling at him like he was the sun itself. They thought they had won. They thought that by taking the house and the money, they had taken my power. They didn't realize that by pushing me out, they were forcing me into the one place I was most dangerous, the outside world, with nothing to lose and the professional skills to tear their legacy apart, line by line, until there was nothing left but the truth. I'll be gone by morning, I said, standing up. Martha didn't even look up from the dishes. Good girl, I knew you'd understand. I walked out of that dining room, but I didn't go to my room to pack. I went to the basement office and opened the cabinet where my father used to keep the house's original deeds and the trust documents. My mother had already moved them to Caleb's room, but she was never good at filing. She had left the master ledger of the family accounts, the one I had been maintaining for her, sitting right on the printer. I didn't take it. I just looked at the last entry Caleb had made. It wasn't a business expense. It was a wire transfer to an offshore account I had never seen before. Caleb wasn't building a headquarters, he was building an escape hatch, and my mother was the one providing the lumber. I went upstairs, grabbed that practical suitcase, and started packing, not because I was defeated, but because I needed to be in a place where they couldn't see me coming. I was standing in the rain 24 hours later, but I wasn't just a daughter who had been kicked out. I was a forensic accountant who had just found the first loose thread in a $500,000 lie, and I was going to pull it until the whole house came down. I moved into a studio apartment on the outskirts of Portland. It was a far cry from the sprawling estate I had called home for 3 decades. The walls were thin, the heater rattled like a dying engine, and the view from my single window was of a gray brick alleyway. But for a forensic accountant, luxury is a distraction. I didn't need a mansion. I needed a high-speed internet connection, a quiet room, and the cold, hard light of my laptop screen. The first night in that studio, I didn't sleep. I sat on a borrowed folding chair, my back aching, and opened the digital files I had secured before leaving. My mother and Caleb thought they had reallocated my life, but they had forgotten one fundamental rule of the digital age. You can kick a person out of a house, but you cannot erase the fingerprints they've left on the data. For years, I had been the one managing Martha's accounts. I knew her passwords, her security questions, and the specific cadence of her spending. I started with the Apex expansion. Caleb had boasted about global contracts and Series A funding, terms that sound impressive to a mother who wants to believe her son is a genius, but to me, they were just red flags. I logged into the Oregon Secretary of State Business Registry. Caleb had registered Apex Global Ventures 14 months ago, but when I looked at the filing documents, something felt off. The registered agent was a P.O. box in a small town I had never heard of. There were no annual reports, no listed board members, just Caleb's name and a signature that looked rushed. Next, I followed the money. I used my authorization as the secondary signer on my mother's main retirement account, an authorization she had forgotten to revoke in her haste to replace me. I watched the $500,000 investment leave her account. It didn't go to an escrow firm or a corporate bank. It moved through a series of rapid-fire transfers, first to a local holding company, then to a digital wallet, and finally, it vanished into a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't a business expansion. This was a disappearance. As a forensic accountant, I am trained to look for patterns of fraud. Fraud has a specific rhythm. It's a dance of obfuscation. Caleb was dancing, but he was clumsy. I spent the next 72 hours submerged in spreadsheets. I pulled every credit report tied to our family home. That's when I found the most devastating blow. Caleb hadn't just taken the $500,000 Martha gave him. He had taken out a second mortgage on the house. He had used a durable power of attorney document, one I suspected was forged or signed by Martha under the guise of business paperwork, to put a massive lien on the property. My mother's childhood home, the legacy she was so desperate to protect for Caleb, was now effectively owned by a high-interest predatory lender. I leaned back, the blue light of the screen reflected in my eyes. I thought about Martha's proud face at the dinner table. She thought she was building a throne for her son, but she was actually standing on a trap door, and Caleb had his hand on the lever. But why? If Caleb was as successful as his Instagram made him out to be, why was he cannibalizing our mother's life? I dug deeper into his executive board. I found the names of his investors, names I recognized from local country club circles. I started cross-referencing their returns with the timing of the withdrawals from Martha's accounts. It was a Ponzi scheme, a classic textbook Ponzi scheme. Caleb was using Martha's retirement money to pay off dividends to earlier investors to keep his successful CEO persona alive. He wasn't a visionary. He was a predator running out of prey. The deeper I went, the darker it got. I found a secret group chat, not the family one, but a business chat Caleb had accidentally synced to the family hub years ago. In it, he joked with a friend about how easy it was to manipulate the old lady. He referred to Martha as his personal ATM and to me as the office nanny who needed to be phased out before I started asking too many questions. "She's a nerd, bro," he had typed. "Give her a spreadsheet and she's happy. But Mom? Mom wants a hero. I'm the hero. As soon as the Seattle wire clears, I'm out. She can have the house back when I'm in Dubai." The betrayal was a physical weight. It wasn't just the money. It was the calculated cruelty of it. He didn't just want to be rich, he wanted to destroy the only person who could see through him, while simultaneously draining the person who loved him most. I spent the rest of the week building the evidence binder. It was a masterpiece of forensic clarity. Tab 1. The Forged Power of Attorney. Tab 2. The Illegal Second Mortgage. Tab 3. The Map of the Shell Companies. Tab 4. The Screenshots of the Group Chat. Tab 5. The List of Victims, the local families whose savings Caleb had also pocketed. I worked until my fingers were numb and my eyes were bloodshot. I lived on black coffee and the cold fury that comes when the reliable child finally understands the full extent of the golden boy's rot. I contacted an old colleague, a detective in the white-collar crime division. I didn't file a report yet. I needed to see the look on their faces first. I needed Martha to see the hero for who he truly was. I needed to witness the moment the glass shattered. By the end of the 7th day, the binder was 3 inches thick. I had every wire transfer, every forged signature, and every lie documented in black and white. In my world, numbers are the final word, and Caleb's numbers had finally reached 0. They thought they had left me with nothing in that rainy driveway. They didn't realize they had left me with the only thing that actually matters. The truth. And I was about to bring that truth home for one last family dinner. I looked at the binder, then at the clock. It was time. Caleb's global celebration was scheduled for the following night. He was planning to announce his departure for Seattle. I was planning to announce his departure for federal prison. I closed my laptop and felt the silence of the room. It was the kind of silence that happens before a storm hits, the kind of silence that makes the coming truth sound like thunder. I picked up the phone and called Martha. "I'm coming over tomorrow night," I said, my voice as steady as a balanced ledger. "I have a gift for Caleb's celebration. You're going to want to see it." Martha sounded annoyed, distracted. "Jennifer, we're very busy, but I suppose if you finally come to your senses and want to apologize to your brother, you can come for dessert." "Oh, don't worry, Mom," I replied. "I'm bringing the most important thing at the table." I hung up. I didn't cry. I just sat there, the forensic accountant in a small room, ready to perform the final audit of the Townsend family legacy. The house on the hill in Portland was glowing. From the driveway, I could see the warm amber lights of the dining room reflecting off the wet pavement. It was the same house I had been kicked out of just days ago, but tonight, it looked like a stage set for a play that was about to take a very dark turn. I sat in my car for a moment, my hand resting on the evidence binder in the passenger seat. My heart wasn't racing. In fact, I felt a strange, icy calm. This is what forensic accountants do. We wait for the numbers to align before we strike. I walked up to the front door and didn't knock. I still had my key. I opened the door and was immediately hit by the smell of expensive catering, truffles, seared steak, and the sharp floral scent of lilies. Martha had gone all out. This wasn't just a dinner. It was a coronation. As I entered the dining room, the conversation died instantly. Martha was at the head of the table, wearing a new silk dress that I knew, based on her recent bank statements, she couldn't afford. Caleb was next to her, looking every bit the global CEO in a tailored suit, a glass of vintage wine in his hand. 2 of Caleb's investors, actually local businessmen from the golf club, were there, laughing at something he had just said. Martha's face hardened the second she saw me. "Jennifer, I told you we were busy tonight. This is a private celebration for Caleb's first fiscal milestone. We didn't set a place for you." "That's okay, Mom," I said, my voice steady as I walked toward the table. "I didn't come for the steak. I came to deliver a gift. Think of it as a closing statement for the Townsend legacy." Caleb leaned back in his chair, a smug grin playing on his lips. "Still dramatic, Jen? Look, if you're here to beg for your room back because that studio apartment is too loud, we can talk tomorrow. Tonight is about growth. It's about the future." "Oh, I'm here for the future, Caleb," I said. I pulled out a chair, the one he had assigned to his executive assistant, and sat down. I placed the thick black binder on the white linen tablecloth. It landed with a heavy thud that made the crystal wine glasses rattle. The guests looked uncomfortable. Martha stood up, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and embarrassment. "Jennifer Ann, leave this room immediately. You are embarrassing yourself in front of our guests." "No, Martha," I said, using her name for the first time in my life. "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. But before these gentlemen sign any more checks to Apex Global Ventures, I think they should see tab 1. I opened the binder. I didn't look at Caleb. I looked at the investors. In tab 1, you'll find the registration details for Apex Global. Caleb told you it's a tech expansion, but if you look at the filing history I've pulled from the Secretary of State, you'll see that the server farm in Seattle is actually a residential P.O. box in a trailer park. There are no employees, no patents, and certainly no global contracts. Caleb's grin faltered. "You don't know what you're talking about. Those are internal shell structures for tax purposes. It's standard practice." "Standard practice doesn't usually involve identity theft, Caleb," I countered. I turned to tab 2. "Mom, do you remember signing that pile of standard business forms Caleb brought you last month? The ones he said were just to authorize the headquarters?" Martha looked at the paper I pushed toward her. Her hands started to shake. It's a power of attorney." "Not just any power of attorney," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "It's a durable power of attorney that gives Caleb full authority over your life insurance, your retirement, and this house. And if you look at the signature on page 4, you'll notice the notary seal is from a company that went out of business 3 years ago. Caleb forged it, Mom. He didn't just take the $500,000 you gave him. He used this document to take out a second mortgage on this house." The room went deathly silent. One of the investors stood up, his face pale. "Caleb, what is she talking about? You said the Series A funding was backed by the family estate's equity as a formality." Caleb slammed his hand on the table. "She's a disgruntled employee. She's mad because I'm the one who succeeded while she's stuck auditing dry cleaners. She's lying, Mom. Tell her to leave." But Martha wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the bank statements in tab 3. This shows a transfer of $80,000 to a Lakeside Holdings in the Caymans," Martha whispered. "Jennifer, what is this?" "That's your retirement fund, Mom," I said. "Or what's left of it. Caleb didn't invest it. He used it to pay off the dividends he promised these gentlemen last month. It's a Ponzi scheme. He's been using your life savings to keep up the appearance of being a CEO so he could lure in bigger fish." I turned to the last tab. This was the one that hurt. "But the worst part isn't the money, Martha. It's how he thinks of you." I pulled out the printed screenshots of the secret group chat. "Caleb has a different name for you in his business chats. He calls you his personal ATM. He told his friends that he had to phase me out of the house because I was getting too close to the numbers. He said, and I quote, 'The old lady wants a hero, so I'll play the part until the Seattle wire clears. Then she can have the house back when it's in foreclosure and I'm in Dubai.'" Caleb lunged for the binder, but I was faster. I pulled it back. The investors were already on their phones, likely calling their lawyers. Martha looked at Caleb. The doting, proud mother was gone. In her place was a woman who was seeing the monster she had fed for 30 years. "Caleb? Is this true?" Caleb didn't deny it this time. His face shifted. The golden boy mask didn't just crack. It fell off, revealing a cold, desperate man. "You were going to die in this house anyway, Mom. I was going to make something of this family. I just needed a little more time. If Jennifer hadn't stuck her nose where it didn't belong, we'd all be rich by next year." "With what money, Caleb?" I asked. "The money you stole from the woman who gave you everything? The money you took from these people who trusted you?" "There was never a tech expansion. There was just you, a laptop, and a pile of forged signatures." Martha sank into her chair. The good china plate in front of her seemed to mock the ruin of her life. "I kicked you out, Jennifer," she whispered, her voice breaking. I told you that you were a distraction. I gave him your room. I know you did, I said, and 24 hours ago, I was standing in the rain because of it. But as a forensic accountant, I don't operate on emotions. I operate on facts. And the fact is, Martha, you've been standing on a trapdoor for years, and your favorite son has had his hand on the lever the whole time. One of the investors looked at Caleb with pure loathing. We're done here, Caleb. My attorneys will be in touch by morning, and I'd suggest you don't try to leave town. They walked out, their footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. The front door slammed, and for the first time in my life, the house felt empty, even with all three of us in the room. Caleb turned to me, his eyes burning with a dark, frantic rage. You think you won? You just destroyed the family name. Everyone in Portland is going to know the Townsends are frauds. You ruined Mom's life just to prove a point. No, Caleb, I said, standing up and tucking the binder under my arm. I didn't ruin her life. You did. I just brought the light so she could see the wreckage. You wanted to be a global CEO? Well, you're about to have a lot of time to study management in a very small cell. Martha reached out for Caleb's hand, but he pulled away, already grabbing his phone, likely trying to move whatever was left in the offshore accounts. But I had already taken care of that. Don't bother, Caleb, I said. I called my contact at the bank 4 hours ago. Your durable power of attorney has been flagged for fraud. All accounts associated with Martha Townsend and Apex Global are frozen. You're broke. And by tomorrow morning, the IRS and the FBI will have a copy of this binder. Martha looked at me, her eyes red with tears. Jennifer, please. What do we do now? You do what you told me to do, Martha, I said, walking toward the door. You're independent. You're reliable. You'll figure it out, but this time, you'll have to do it without my college fund, without your retirement, and without the daughter you threw away. I walked out of that glowing house and didn't look back. The rain had stopped, and the air was cold and clear. In the distance, I could hear the faint sound of a siren, a sound that, for Caleb, was the beginning of the end. I got into my car and sat in the silence. 24 hours ago, I was homeless. Tonight, I was the only Townsend left with a foundation that wasn't built on a lie. The night after the confrontation felt like the longest century of my life. I didn't go back to the family house to watch the fallout. I didn't need to. In my line of work, once the forensic audit is complete and the evidence is filed, the math takes care of itself. Numbers are gravity. Eventually, they pull everything down. I sat in my small studio apartment, the binder now resting on my desk like a dormant explosive. I had done my part. I had presented the truth. Now, the systems of the world, the banks, the investigators, and the law would do theirs. It was exactly 9:14 a.m. when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who lived across the street from my mother's house for 20 years. She didn't know the details of our family drama, but she knew what a police cruiser looked like. Jennifer, is everything okay at your mom's? There are 2 black SUVs and a local police car in the driveway. They've been there for 20 minutes. I didn't reply. I just stood by my window, looking out at the gray Portland sky, and imagined the scene. I could see the front door, the one I had been kicked out of, opening to men in windbreakers with letters across their backs. I could see Martha, my mother, standing in the hallway, probably still wearing her CEO of the household robe, clutching her chest as her world was dissected by people who didn't care about family legacies or visionary sons. 24 hours earlier, I was a homeless daughter standing in the rain. Now Caleb was the one whose space was being reallocated into a state-mandated cell. From what I gathered later through the police reports and the legal filings, the scene was anything but quiet. When the FBI and the white-collar crime unit arrived, Caleb didn't go down with the dignity he had spent years pretending to possess. He didn't offer a visionary defense. He tried to run. He actually climbed out of the kitchen window, the same window where Martha used to set her homemade pies to cool, and tried to reach his SUV. He was tackled on the lawn, the very grass my father had mowed every Saturday to ensure the Townsend name looked perfect to the neighbors. Martha watched as her golden boy was pressed into the dirt. She watched as they pulled the $4,000 loafers off his feet to check for any hidden assets. She watched as they carried out the executive monitors he had moved into my bedroom, not knowing those screens were filled with the evidence of his identity theft and the digital breadcrumbs of a $500,000 fraud. But the climax wasn't just the arrest. It was the moment the legal weight of his lies hit Martha. Because she had signed those business forms, the ones I had warned her about, she was no longer just a victim. By granting Caleb durable power of attorney and signing off on the fraudulent second mortgage, she had technically become an unintentional co-conspirator in a major financial crime. I received a call from the lead investigator around noon. "Ms. Townsend, we've taken Caleb into custody. We've also flagged the property for a potential seizure pending the audit of the misappropriated funds. Your mother is currently being questioned. She's asking for you." I took a deep breath. For a split second, the old Jennifer, the reliable one, the fixer, wanted to grab her keys, drive to that house, and handle the paperwork. I wanted to protect Martha from the cold reality of the interrogation room. But then I looked at the single suitcase sitting in the corner of my studio. I remembered the sound of the door clicking shut behind me when she handed it over. "I've provided all the evidence required in the binder," I told the investigator, my voice like ice. "My mother has legal counsel options provided by the state if she can't afford a private attorney after the accounts are settled. I am not an authorized party in Caleb's business affairs. I am just the daughter who was moved out to make room for the data racks." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. He knew exactly what I was saying. By evening, the news hit the local Portland business circles. "Promising tech entrepreneur Caleb Townsend, arrested in multi-state Ponzi scheme." The global visionary was now a headline in the crime section. The investors I had warned at the dinner table didn't wait for the court dates. They filed civil suits within hours. I drove past the house one last time that night. The yellow crime scene tape was gone, but the house looked different. The amber glow was missing. The Townsend legacy was a dark shell. Martha was still inside, I assumed, sitting in the silence of a home that was no longer hers, surrounded by the ghosts of a son she had turned into a god and a daughter she had treated like an employee. 24 hours. That was all it took for the truth to finish what favoritism had started. Caleb was in a holding cell, facing 20 years for wire fraud and identity theft. Martha was facing the loss of every asset she owned, from the retirement fund to the very roof over her head. And me? I was back in my studio, opening a new spreadsheet. But this one wasn't for the Townsends. This one was for my new life. I had performed the ultimate audit, and the result was clear. I owed them nothing. The accounts were finally, brutally balanced. They say that blood is thicker than water, but in my experience, numbers are thicker than both. Caleb thought he could rewrite the ledger. Martha thought she could ignore the deficit. But in the end, the truth doesn't care about your favorite child. It only cares about the bottom line. As I closed my laptop that night, I didn't feel like I had won. I felt like a structure that had finally been stripped of its rotting timber. It was quiet. It was lonely. But for the first time in 31 years, I was standing on a foundation that was entirely my own. It has been exactly 6 months since the night the lights went out at the Townsend estate. In my line of work, we often talk about the recovery phase, the period after a financial disaster where you try to salvage what remains. But some structures are so badly damaged that there is nothing left to save. You don't repair them. You clear the site and start over. Caleb's trial was swift. When a forensic accountant hands the FBI a 3-inch binder of perfectly documented wire fraud and identity theft, there isn't much left for a defense attorney to say. Caleb, the global visionary, is currently serving an 18-year sentence in a federal facility. He no longer posts photos of private jets or designer watches. Now, his world is measured in the square footage of a shared cell and the rigid schedule of a prison yard. He still calls me sometimes, using his limited phone credits to blame me for destroying the family name. I don't answer. I blocked his number the day the gavel hit the desk. Martha's life took a different, quieter turn. The house in Portland, the one she was so proud of, the one she kicked me out of to make room for Caleb's lies, went into foreclosure 2 months ago. The predatory loans Caleb had secured using her forged signature were ironclad. She lost everything: the retirement fund, the savings, and the legacy she thought she was protecting. She lives in a small, one-bedroom senior apartment now, on the other side of town. It's a clean place, but it's small. There are no chandeliers, no good china, and no golden boy to admire. She called me last week. Her voice sounded older, thinner, stripped of the arrogance that used to define her. She didn't ask how I was doing. She asked if I could help her with her monthly expenses. "You've always been the reliable one, Jennifer," she said, using that same patronizing tone. "You're stable. You have so much, and your brother is, well, you know." I told her what I should have told her years ago. I am stable because I worked for it, Martha, not because I was handed a legacy. I will make sure you have groceries and medical care, but I will not fund a lifestyle that was built on my own sacrifice. You taught me that I had to figure it out on my own, and that's exactly what I did. I didn't say it with anger. I said it with the clarity of a balanced ledger. As for me, I am no longer the uncompensated consultant for people who don't value me. I opened my own forensic auditing firm. My office is small, but the name on the door is mine, and every cent that passes through my accounts is earned with integrity. I still live in a studio, but this one has a view of the mountains, not an alleyway. And most importantly, the only person I am reliable for is myself. The lesson I learned in that rainy driveway is one I hope you never have to learn the hard way. Favoritism is a toxic debt that eventually comes due. When you ignore the child who shows up, the child who does the work, and the child who tells the truth in favor of the one who tells beautiful lies, you aren't just hurting your family, you are sabotaging your own future. If you are the reliable one in your family, the one who is always expected to fix the problems, but never invited to the celebration, listen to me. Your worth is not measured by how much you can do for people who don't respect you. You are not an operating expense. You are the foundation. And if they don't see that, it's time to take your foundation and build something that actually belongs to you. Thank you for staying with me through Jennifer's journey. This has been a story of truth, numbers, and the quiet strength it takes to walk away from a lie. If this story moved you, or if you've ever had to stand your ground against your own family, please share your experience in the comments below. We read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real stories of dignity and resilience. Your support helps us keep these voices heard. Until next time, remember, silence may be quiet, but the truth is always louder. I'm Jennifer, and for the first time in my life, my accounts are perfectly balanced.